it is unfortunate that the legendary Doc Savage is a name that has been forgotten by a majority of moviegoers. In today's time, we say it is unfortunate because this character is so iconic that many hail him as the world's first superhero and a character who inspired the creation of Superman. Doc Savage started as a 1930s pulp icon and also known as the Man of Bronze. This unique hero was widely popular from pulp magazines to his live-action adaptation in a 1975 movie. In this video, we'll be bringing you everything there is to know about this unforgettable character and also explore the physiological marvels that made him so legendary. Now, before we go into explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means an awful lot. Thank you, and let's begin. Who is Doc Savage and how was the character created? This fictional hero went by the name Clark Savage Jr., and he was a heroic man who first appeared in pulp magazines during the 1930s. He was created by editor John L. Nanovic and publisher Henry W. Ralston, and the main writer for the series was Lester Dent. With time, he appeared in other media as well, such as radio, film, and comic books, and later his adventures were reprinted as paperback books, which became bestsellers in the US. The protagonist of this iconic storyline, Doc Savage, aka Clark Savage Jr., was a polymathic scientist, detective, explorer, and warrior all in one. And his righteous, heroic nature, as pointed out by Stan Lee, paved the way for later superheroes to base their stories on. The look of Doc Savage was based on the popular model and actor Clark Gable, and the creators even borrowed the first name Clark to name the character. The original appearance of Doc Savage showed him a subtle golden bronze tanned skin and bronze-colored hair, and his eyes were flaked with gold. Such traits in his appearance got him the name the Man of Bronze. It was only during the 1960s that a noticeable change in the appearance of Doc Savage was first observed. He had a more superhuman bronzed man with his trademark ripped shirt and hairstyle. This look was more in line with fashion model Steve Holland, who played Flash Gordon in the original 1950s TV series. Exploring the origin and backstory of Doc Savage. Clark Savage Jr. was shaped into a superhero with incredible powers by his father, Clark Savage Sr., who was a wealthy and influential man. He trained his son from a very early age, and Clark Savage Jr. underwent a strict regimen of exercises that helped him improve his muscles and intelligence. With time, he became a successful physician. So you know that this Doc title is not just a gimmick. Besides medicine, he proved his expertise in sciences, arts, and research, and his knowledge made him special combined with his physical abilities and martial arts skills. It was his father's wish that Doc Savage would devote a significant part of his life to adventures, and his life goal was to protect the common man. The meticulous upbringing that he underwent also helped him develop a strong moral code which made him incorruptible. He sought the services of 5 experts who formed his mini-team, and this is a topic that we will touch upon later in the video. Aside from his adventures and crime fighting, Doc Savage was also a successful entrepreneur, and he owned several buildings, combat vehicles, and state-of-the-art technology that kept him one step ahead of his enemies. In fact, many aren't aware that Doc Savage did have his stint in other popular Marvel superheroes as well when he teamed up with Spider-Man and The Thing on a couple of occasions. Did Doc Savage have any superpowers? There is something extraordinary about those individuals in the superhero world who don't have any particular superpower and still manage to get the job done, be it the major versions of Batman and Iron Man, which show them without any significant superpower, or be it Doc Savage. The notion stands corrected. Yes, Doc Savage had no superpowers or superhuman abilities unless you consider all of his skills that he acquired over a period of time. He was a mortal human, just like anyone else, which meant that he was susceptible to damage. More importantly, Doc Savage had to rely on his training and experience to unravel the mysteries because he had no flashy superpower to fall back upon. How physically strong was Doc Savage? For someone who has trained all his life under strict discipline and values, you can imagine just how strong and capable Doc Savage would be. Even without any superhuman strength, he could take down multiple enemies, and this was a wonderful mix of brains and bronze. As for his physical strength, his regular yoga and calisthenics helped him along with meditation and arithmetical mental exercises. Over the years, he had sharpened his sensory abilities so much that he developed a very sensitive and directional hearing that helped him against his enemies. The daily intensive exercises kept him fit and strong enough for combat, and if he did fall short, he always had his wonder gadgets to fall back on. What were some of the special gadgets used by Doc Savage? Many are of the opinion that Doc Savage storylines were actually ahead of their times, and this was because of the wide array of special gadgets and technology used by the protagonist. He possessed several high-tech devices, and he carried along with him many of these. He had a thin, bulletproof vest, listening devices paired with gadgets on his ear, an ultraviolet light lantern and goggles, and a hand grenade. He also possessed a super machine pistol and a wrist radio, and many of his weapons could be improvised from anything he had at his disposal. His rubberized shield and a gadget capable of identifying chemical traces and oxygen filters were also quite handy. Doc Savage usually reported a self-designed vest that could be used to keep all the gadgets. To make transportation easy, Doc Savage used a trademark roadster, but his most special vehicle has to be the super cool armored tank that he called the Juggernaut. He also developed a pan-continental airplane and a scout submarine called the Helldiver. It is almost remarkable how many of these gadgets and technologies found use later on and became a reality over the next few decades. How Doc Savage could immobilize someone using pressure points. Doc Savage lived by a strict ethical code, and he wasn't very accepting of killing someone. He even forbade his teammates from manslaughter in any form, and he majorly used his weapons in such a way that would only immobilize his enemies temporarily instead of leaving a fatal injury. However, he did possess certain skills that made him an expert combatant, and his inability to kill people rarely became a hindrance. One of these skills was his use of pressure points on the human body, where he could simply press a nerve in the neck of his opponents and knock him down quite harmlessly. He was extremely stealthy and agile, and this often helped him to sneak up on his opponents and leave them unconscious before they even had a chance. How did his intelligence and knowledge actively help his missions? For a man who lacked any superpowers, Doc Savage was never bogged down because of the depth of knowledge which he used effectively in his missions. His medical degree, for instance, came in handy on several occasions. He was a skilled doctor who specialized in surgery, and he also innovated several state-of-the-art techniques, including performing brain surgery, which was nothing short of a miracle during those times. He could perform a particular surgery on humans that could make them forget certain events, and he also developed artificial heart valves. All this knowledge helped him immensely for investigation purposes, and he also had the ability to identify pure elements by sight. Such was his chemistry knowledge. He knew and understood a variety of languages, was an expert in multiple fields like history, geography, meteorology, etc. And overall, he was a true superhuman even without superhero abilities. On top of it all, Doc Savage was someone with great leadership skills, and this always came in handy when he had to maneuver his trusted men in various missions. If being rich is a superpower, Doc Savage certainly has one. We have all experienced a fair share of billionaire playboy superheroes in both Marvel and DC universe, where the likes of Iron Man and Batman have charmed the fans with their charisma and wealth. Doc Savage isn't too far behind, and while he might be shy in front of the ladies, he surely has an abundance of wealth that puts him in the leagues of the richest superheroes ever. He has a steady supply of gold coming from a Central American mine that has been bequeathed to him by the local descendants of the Mayans. He has built a fortune in this regard, and from a fancy base of operations on the 86th floor of a building to his fortress of solitude, there are luxuries that only he can afford. He also has an insane fleet of cars, aircrafts, boats, and a series of high-end gadgets, and many of these are kept in a secret facility beneath the Hudson River. He also has a system of underground pneumatic tubes to connect his facility to his offices, and his vast wealth has allowed Doc Savage to pursue many of his futuristic experiments to come up with unique gadgets. Innovation is tough without the resources, and it is a good thing that Doc Savage never runs out of that. What makes Doc Savage such an ethical character? There is one quality of Doc Savage that many of his fans love the most about him. No, we're not talking about his incredible skills or freakishly good looks, but something that goes deeper and delves into his character. He is simply incorruptible, and his moral righteousness comes from a code and oath that he lives by. The oath taken by Doc Savage goes like this, and it can give any of your finest ethical superheroes a run for their money. Let me strive every moment of my life to make myself better and better, to the best of my ability, that all may profit by it. Let me think of the right and lend all my assistance to those who need it, with no regard for anything but justice. Let me take what comes with a smile without loss of courage. Let me just be considerate of my country, of my fellow citizens, and my associates in everything I say and do. Let me do right to all and wrong no man. Wouldn't someone like Captain America be proud to say these lines and live by such values? everything you need to know about John Sunlight, the arch nemesis of Doc Savage. Doc Savage doesn't really have a line of recurring villains, which makes John Sunlight a very unique antagonist in all his adventures. He is the only one who faced Doc Savage twice, and his overall nature has assured the fans that he is the worthy arch rival that a superhero character like Doc Savage deserves. His first appearance brought him to Doc Savage's attention when he infiltrated his fortress of solitude in the Arctic after escaping from a Russian prison. John stole many of the futuristic weapons, and soon he was a major problem for the world. What makes him stand out among all the other enemies encountered by Doc Savage is the fact that he is so well matched with the hero in terms of strength and skills. In fact, John Sunlight is actually more physically powerful. He matches Doc Savage in terms of intelligence, and his cunning mind keeps a righteous superhero on his toes. He seeks to bring the world under his command so that he can end all the problems of humanity, but his methods are far too radical and violent. In one of his appearances, John Sunlight even seemingly kills himself in the end rather than being saved by Doc Savage, but not before he destroys everything that Doc Savage holds dear to himself. If there is a movie adaptation in the future, it would be fun to see our protagonist run into this mighty opponent once again. What was Doc Savage's major weakness? A simple and ethical man at heart is often not prepared for the cunning world, and that is something that troubled Doc Savage every now and then. He was limited by ethical thinking of his time, where he couldn't believe that someone ladylike could harm him, and this backfired at times. In fact, there have been quite a few instances where people simply acted in ways that were difficult to comprehend for Doc Savage, and they managed to give him the slip temporarily. That being said, since he had no superpowers as such, Doc Savage was always susceptible to a severe injury that could potentially kill, and it is the human-like weakness that made him so likable. Is Doc Savage really the world's first superhero? We mentioned in this video that Doc Savage was indeed marketed as the world's first superhero, but maybe the tag is not factually correct. Of course, his presence and popularity helped him in shaping several future superheroes, but there were a few other heroic characters who existed before the Man of Bronze. The likes of Hugo Hercules and Hugo Danner and had certain superhuman abilities and acted as heroes, and there were some others as well who didn't become as popular as Doc Savage. However, the factual bit still doesn't change, and it is not appropriate to say that Doc Savage is the world's first superhero. Doc Savage might have coined the world's first superhero team. He might not be the world's first superhero, technically, but we can still make a case for Doc Savage being the first proper creator of a superhero team. He did assemble a team of extraordinary fellows called the Fabulous Five, and they all helped in fighting the evil and corrupt forces. These teammates of Doc Savage included Brigadier General Ham Brooks, who was a lawyer armed with a sword cane that had its blades dipped in a super-fast anesthetic. Lieutenant Colonel Monk was a skilled chemist and former boxer who often got into an argument with Ham. The other members were a brutish Colonel John Renwick, who was a construction engineer, Major Roberts, an electrical engineer and capable fighter, and William Littlejohn, who was an archaeologist and geologist. Needless to say, none of them had superpowers per se, but their combined skills were no less, and they were definitely a force to be reckoned with. We also have to consider Doc Savage's bronze-skinned fiery cousin Pat Savage, who sometimes came along for various missions. All in all, this was definitely the beginning of the concept of a superhero team, much before the Avengers or Justice League came along. Is Dwayne Johnson preparing for a new Doc Savage adaptation? The rumor mills are running overtime, and for a good reason. Dwayne Johnson has revealed officially on social media that he's teaming up with J.J. Abrams for a mystery project alongside writer Zach Penn. The post also stated that the project has spent years in the making, and since there were news about a Doc Savage adaptation featuring Dwayne Johnson many years ago, people are speculating that the new team-up might be for the much-awaited project. It all happened back in 2016 when Dwayne Johnson was supposed to be a part of a Doc Savage movie directed by Shane Black, but that never happened. Maybe now is the time, and with someone like Zach Penn who has enough comic book and superhero writing experience on board, it might be a worthy Doc Savage movie adaptation at last. Marvelous verdict. A Doc Savage movie adaptation can be a game changer. Nobody complains about quality content from the past brought back in a new avatar, and a character as popular as Doc Savage certainly deserves to be popularized yet again. The current generation is largely clueless about such an iconic figure in American superhero history, and it would be fun to have someone like Dwayne Johnson bring him back, preferably through a good story and a solid movie. Also, it is worth considering that a massive commercial success will mean that some other forgotten pulp heroes might also receive comeback calls calls. And wouldn't that be a nice nostalgic trip for all those who grew up reading All About? Do let us know in the comments below what you think about a potential Doc Savage movie in the making, and also share your thoughts on the unique anatomy and backstory of the character. If you like our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.